Alhamdulillah, and we want to say all praises and thanks are due to God Almighty for blessing us to be here. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God Almighty, to shower His peace and blessings onto all the messengers and prophets and the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. I greet each and every one of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. So as we are on the roll, on time, we would really like everyone to occupy the chairs. So if our ushers and volunteers can add more chairs to these chairs so we don't have anyone sitting in the back, we'd really appreciate that. That's what we want to get. You can probably add these rows here, add a few chairs on these rows here so we can have a full seating audience here, please. And we need to occupy the front rows, so if we can bring the guests, please feel free. Yeah, of course. So I want to take the pleasure to welcome Rabbi Mark Weiner, Deacon Norm Carroll, Reverend Dr. Grace Telesco, and Reverend John White is right next door, so I think he's just finishing up a service as he's on his way, so he's right behind this wall, so he's technically here. So I'd like our ushers, Salma, Alicia, etc., could you coordinate with the Reverend next door so we can have him come across? Could we have these front seats filled first, please? Yes, as I said, Brother Shamir, maybe we could add some more chairs on the sides as we have people come in. We still have a few vacant seats in the front. I would really appreciate if we can fill all the front seats. I know it's 11:29. We got 1 minute again. And just to let you know, for our non-Muslim friends, when we say Alhamdulillah, it's an Arabic word which means praise the Lord. All praises and thanks are due to God Almighty. And it is indeed again a pleasure and a blessing to have each and every one of you. We welcome each and every one of you here. Thank you very much for coming. This is a talk show, so we want to have you run the show. And I'm not going to waste much time as we hit the clock on 11:30 because we have viewers on Al-Hikmah TV live, and we are already live. And we'll be live on YouTube. We are live on Facebook. So I could probably give you guys a few seconds. Maybe remember to take your phones off. I mean, not totally off, but silent. You can text your friends and relatives nationwide, worldwide, and let them know they can see you here live. Just Google Al-Hikmat, whether TV, YouTube, or Al-Hikmat, Facebook, and they can see what's going on here live. So without any further delay, as we welcome Reverend John White. It's a pleasure to have you, Reverend. I mentioned to the audience that you are here. We were just behind the wall. Thank Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure. So in the meantime, I want to take this opportunity to welcome Brother Zad. There's a chair in the front here. You guys sit in the front. I want to welcome each and every one of you again, formally and officially, to this live talk show. The name of this show is Voice, V-O-I-C-E, and it stands for itself. Voice of Interfaith Community Expressions. So you feel free to voice your opinions, express yourselves at this program here. So without any further delay, I want to introduce Deacon Norm Carroll, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and say who they are and where they're from, rather than I doing that. So I begin. You can take the mic off the stand so you can have it in your hands and just pass it on. You will do the same thing here. So, Deacon Norm Carroll.
Yes, I am Deacon Norm Carroll, and I'm here as from the St. Benedict's Episcopal Church in Plantation. Years ago, I studied to be a priest in the Roman Catholic faith, but whether Catholic or whether Episcopal, I'm of the core belief that we all belong together, and that we all must stand together for the cause of peace.
And we have Reverend Dr. Grace Telesco.
Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah. My name is Reverend Dr. Grace Telesco. I'm from the Darshan Center for Spiritual Evolution in Wilton Manors, and it is an interfaith center and also Sacred Journey Interfaith Seminary, where we train folks who are called to interfaith ministry. I'm also a retired lieutenant NYPD after 20 years. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much. And we'll ask my friend on the right here, Reverend John White, to do his introduction.
Good morning and assalamu alaikum. I am excited and honored and humbled to come next door. This is my second time. I've shared one Friday, slid in the back, and was tremendously blessed. I am just leaving Ghana and Paris and Amsterdam with a group from my church, and tomorrow I'm going to Haiti. So we are excited. I am grateful for our partnership. We share parking lots together. And we've never had any issues. Somebody ought to say amen. I know it's Sunday. Y'all can say amen. I know. Can y'all say amen? Somebody say amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank y'all.
Amen.
Y'all made me feel so much better. And we are excited about being here, and I'm happy to be a part of this dialogue. I'm the pastor of the Emmanuel Temple AME Church, which is right next door. We are a church that's be 6 years old in April. And we are happy to be with our brothers and sisters from other mothers and fathers. Amen.
Thank you very much. Rabbi Mark Weiner.
I think I'm the eldest of the panel. I'm going to be 75 this week. Real
It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much.
Inshallah, I'm going for 120, just like Moses.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. It's such a pleasure to be back with you here and to be with my trusty sidekick, Sheikh Shafayat. I really love this place. There are a number of my fellow Jews who think I spend more time in mosques and churches than at synagogues, but it doesn't matter. I was a synagogue rabbi for 43 years. That was my day job. But my night job and my passion, since I was a little boy, I was born in Utah and I grew up in Texas, so I'm a Jewish cowboy. And since I was a very little boy, and I once was a little boy, I was very much into being a Jew myself, but I loved talking with people of all different religions and getting to know them, getting to understand them. And over the many years of my very rich and wonderful life, praise be to God for that, I have spent a lot of time building bridges and building partnerships in which people could live together in mutual respect and celebrate their differences. That's as much a part of my faith and my worldview as is my own deep commitment to the Jewish tradition. And I don't see that as a conflict whatsoever. The last 20 years, I have specialized in Islam. I studied with 6 Islamic scholars in London who were all graduates of the great Islamic University in Cairo. And they studied with me, and we all learned to build together. So I'm really privileged to be here, really delighted to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. And those of you who are aware of the program and would have received one of these flyers, you would know that the topics of discussion on this live talk show are very interesting topics, realistic topics of what's happening around in America, in the world today. But because we're in America, we will focus on America and what's going on around from an interfaith perspective, because we got the interfaith leaders here. And I don't think I need to introduce myself. Everyone knows me, Sheikh Shafayat, the Amir and principal of Darul Uloom Institute here, and Al Hikmah TV, the founder of Al Hikmah TV. We got the entire crew around. As I said before, we are live on Al Hikmah TV, on YouTube, and on Facebook. And we have been working very hard by the mercy of God Almighty to keep this network going. And we want to say a special Jazakallah. May God Almighty bless all those brothers and sisters who have been very influential and very helpful in making this Al Hikmah TV network successful, that people all over the world can view our programs, our sermons, our lectures, and different educational programs. It has been very beneficial because one of the questions that a lot of non-Muslim friends have always had is, are you guys, or are you Muslims, people who talk nice in churches and interfaith programs, and then in your mosque and in your religious places and with your Muslims, you are all against Christians, Jews, Americans, and the West? And I kept on telling them no. And that was one of the things that motivated us to go live on our sermons, so that the world outside can see it's uncensored, so everyone can see what we say here, what we preach here. It's the same thing we say out there. And you can go on YouTube or Al Hikmah TV or Facebook, and you can verify that. So today the topics are race and religion in America. Some interesting topics, and you would have known that played a major role in the elections and the various elections over the years that take place in America, especially the last one. We're also going to talk a little bit on gun violence in America. So I'm not going to go and ask each one of the panelists to speak a little bit. I'm not going to do that, and then open the floor for questions. It's a talk show, so we want everyone to be part of this. Feel like you're in an Oprah Winfrey talk show here this morning. Just say what you want to say, how you want to say it. I know you will not use any obscene languages. We don't want to say anything bad about anybody. We want to be constructive and intellectual. All right? So we will leave the floor open now. We also got some pens, and we got paper here. Anyone who will not like to come up on the microphone, we have a wireless mic. We have a wireless mic that we're going to pass around. Just raise your hands, and one of our ushers will bring it to you. And you can feel free to ask your question. And as you ask your question, please hand the mic back so they can pass it to the next person. And that, in the meantime, the panelists will be answering your question. All right?
I'll start.
Okay, we got...
I'm concerned about the America that I'm living in right now. When it comes to people of color, minorities, I'm very concerned that we can't, in my words, have a Rodney King spirit. We can't all get along. regardless of who we worship, how we worship, where we worship, that we can agree to disagree and not let our differences divide us for the common good. I'm particularly in the person who's sitting in the White House and the divide and conquer tactics. The recent tweets against our Muslim brothers and sisters. There's an adage that says that when I came for the Muslims and nobody said anything, and then when I came for the Jews and nobody said anything, and then keeps going on with different groups, and then no one was left but us, and nobody said anything. I'm concerned that people in the majority community are not speaking out when oppression happens. As a student of history, in the civil rights movement in particular, Jews as well as some of our Protestant brothers and sisters were a big part of that movement. Why can't we start another kind of movement that combats the foolishness and the shenanigans that's going on social media in particular? That's my 2 cents for right now.
So I would ask any one of the panelists who would like to respond to that, and then again we'll open it up to the floor.
Glad to. I want to second everything that my black brother here has just said, because I agree with every word that he said, including his great concern. What I want to emphasize, though, is how important it is for all of us to be hopeful, to resist, and to be resilient, okay? Hopeful, resilient, resist. Those are the 3 words that I want to emphasize. Because I've lived such a long life, I've been through a lot of things in this country and in this world, and I've experienced a lot of things in a lot of places. And though I can recognize this is a bad time, I've experienced worse. I grew up in the segregated South. I went to a segregated schools. I was the only white boy in the NAACP Youth Council in Texas. And I was a sit-in leader, and when I was a chaplain in the United States Army, I was an anti-war demonstrator and worker, and I've been through a lot of things. I've earned my stripes. And I think it's really important that we be hopeful that when we work together, we can accomplish things. We need to have the steel resilience within ourselves to stand up and to resist the hatred which is against any other in our society. And I think we have to recognize that the way that we're going to do that is precisely as the Reverend said, by forming coalitions of decency to work for mutual respect, to be focused on what we're working for, and to not permit words of hatred to be espoused toward anybody. We have to stand up together against racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, Christophobia, which is hatred of Christians, which there is some of. And we have to recognize that every single one of our groups has a fundamental problem within. We all have a conflict within our different religious groups between fundamentalist extremists on the one side and moderates. Without any equivocation, I say we have that problem among Jews. We've always had that problem. We have the problem big time right now between fundamentalist extremists on the one hand and moderates. Moderates of all groups get together, and we are overwhelmingly the majority of people on the face of the earth. But a lot of time we allow the extremist fundamentalists to seize the public spotlight and to be the ones who are always speaking on television and are always written about in the newspapers. So we have to publicize these kind of events, and we have to speak about these kind of events together, where we work together, we link arms together, we stand up for each other. Those are the principles that we all should espouse.
So I suppose that we have already accepted the fact that there are a great amount of race around us. So we have passed that stage of asking the question, do you think race exists? So based on what the rabbi has said and the reverend, we have already passed that stage. Now we're talking about the solution. So I'll pass the microphone on again now to the deacon and reverend for your comments, and please get your questions ready, the audience.
I couldn't help but remember back a year ago when I was considering my vote, and I was considering whether to vote Republican or Democrat, for a male or a female, for Clinton or for Trump. And then I realized that I did not really have an accurate standard by which to judge these two. So I retreated into my solitary self and came to the realization that we must select our candidates according to two standards. One is competence, and the other is truth and compassion, kindness. I'm not going to tell you how I voted, but I will tell you that these standards are eternal standards, particularly the latter, so that religion does have a role to play in politics, a direct role, because it directly affects the politicians and how they think and the decisions that they make. Standards also apply to the worth of a nation. And so I couldn't help but remember last year that in Japan there were 50 who were murdered by guns. In Europe, in each nation of Europe, approximately 150 were taken by gun violence. And then in Canada, it rose to 200 for the year of 2016. And in the United States, over 10,000. Something is wrong. And so as we look within our own hearts, we must analyze what's going on there. How can I help? And so this morning, I'm ready to announce that I shall not ever have a gun in my possession, that I shall never have a gun in my home, because I believe we must reach out to each other in trust, not with bullets and not with hateful language, but with the truth of our God, of Allah, of Adonai. This is why we're here, and so I invite all of you to take the same pledge, not to live in fear, but to live in mutual trust.
So I come from two different perspectives. I come from a spiritual perspective and also a practical perspective, having been a police officer, a sergeant, and a lieutenant in the NYPD, and having trained thousands of police recruits in my tenure 1,000 years ago, it feels like. So from the spiritual aspect, I want to say that I want to piggyback on what Rabbi said about hope, because I believe in the compassion of God and the mercifulness of God, and I believe in God's protection, al-Raqib, and God's generosity, and I believe in God's peace. And so I plug into that from a spiritual perspective and say that if I can be those things, if I can be peace, if I could be generosity, if I could act as protector by standing up for my brothers and my sisters who are being biased, discriminated against, harmed. If I can do that, I can be the change, as Gandhi said, in the world that I want to see. But then on the practical perspective and the practical reality, And I've spoken about this a couple of different times over the course of my tenure in policing and as a criminal justice professor. And that is that we need action, and then action has to take place at the police level, at the governmental level, at the community level, and at the individual level. So when I say take action, what do I mean? I mean that we can inform our policies, we can inform our practices, our criminal justice practices, and as far as our government is concerned, this is the challenge that we have been presented with today. The government that we have, the leaders that we have. This is a challenge, but it isn't something that we need to despair around, in my opinion, and that is because of our spiritual understanding that God is the leader and that God can take care of us if we do the footwork. And I believe that if we take one step toward God, God takes 1,000 steps towards us. I know that. I believe that. And so the challenge for us is in policing, is to go to our leaders, who are our commissioners, our chiefs of police, as a community and as communities coming together and letting these police departments know how important training is, how important education of police is, how important policies and practices are, and to be able to really listen to what the communities are saying.
Thank you very much. Again, politics and religion in America, race and gun violence. So the audience, you don't have to stick to one topic, and we're not going one after the other. On any one of these topics, feel free to ask your question. Yes, sir. You have the microphone.
Good morning, all of you. All of you already mentioned directly or indirectly that religious influence politics more or less, and it's happened before too, nothing new. So my question is now, since you know that religious influence in politics is good, bad, whatever it is, did you guys take any initiative to separate religious from the politics, or any thought for future so it doesn't harm the religious belief based on the political affiliation? Thank you.
Anyone of the panelists would like to respond? Okay, Deacon.
Politics is a thing, a science. What we're interested in is the politicians. And the politicians, as well as every man and woman, make their decisions and form their policies according to their beliefs. And this is where religion comes in. Religion must impact the thinking of every one of us. And rather than complain about our politicians, perhaps we should take measures, as was mentioned by my sister Grace, measures to influence positively the togetherness of all of us and demonstrate this to our politicians. Politics and religion do go together through the politicians.
Wonderful, wonderful.
There's no way of separating politics from religion, but it's very important to protect the life of our polity, the entire society, against any kind of illusion that any one politician or any one position possesses all of the religious truth. And what we have, which is very destructive right now, is we have certain positions which are being taken by politicians who are claiming that their position is a result of their religious faith, and that their religious faith certifies only one position. We have to find a way to build a society in which we can be respectful of all of the differences in our society, just as we have to construct that kind of a world in which we're mutually respectful of all the differences in our world. We're not going to have a world where everybody is a Muslim, or everybody is a Hindu, or everybody is a Christian. Certainly not where everybody is a Jew. God forbid. Let me tell you, when Jews take control, they start fighting among themselves just like Muslims. It's a great reality. And I want to remind all of you, Dr. Grace mentioned Gandhi, and really one of the prophets of the modern world for all of us. I want to remind you that Gandhi was murdered, was assassinated by a Hindu extremist who was opposed to Gandhi's efforts to keep India together and to keep Muslims and Hindus together. In other words, Gandhi, a Hindu, was assassinated because he was reaching out to Muslims and trying to keep Muslims and Hindus together. I want to remind you, and I say this, I'm not only an American citizen, I'm also a British citizen, though certainly not born there, that before the British, Muslims, out of respect for Hindus, did not eat beef in India because they were living together in the society. And even though, according to halal, as all of you Muslims know, there's nothing wrong with eating beef as long as it's slaughtered and prepared properly. But out of respect for their Hindus who lived in the same society, they said, we're not going to do that because we want to be respectful to our Hindu neighbors. Now, that's the kind of society that we have to build, where we have each other's backs, we respect each other, we stand up for each other, we stand up for the integrity of each other. Now, I want to touch on one other thing. I hope to hell that there are a couple of people here who are properly armed, okay, who are legal in carrying weapons, who've been designated as guards to the mosque. Because there are, and I hope to hell that the police are aware that we're having this meeting and that there's some kind of protection that we have. Because there are hateful people out there who, just like that Hindu extremist who assassinated Gandhi, there are people who would want to disrupt and demonstrate against this. There might even be a few Muslims who are upset that we're having this kind of meeting, that we're talking together. And I guarantee you that there are Jews and there are Christians who think the fact that we talk together and that Shafayat and I are friends, that's something outrageous. We need to find appropriate ways to deal with guns. We're not going to be able to ban weapons the way that they have in Britain. And as I think the deacon said, there's just a tiny number of gun murders. We actually have close to 35,000 people who are killed by guns in America. And we have more guns per capita than any society in the world. We're not going to be able to get rid of them, but we have to work together to get better control. And if there is no way that I want to live in a place in America where the police don't have weapons. I like that in London. They did that very well. But here, we need police that are armed, and we probably need protection for our religious institutions, unfortunately, because there are people out there who hate us and who'd love to take us down and love to attack us, and we can't permit that. So I think there's a kind of a balance. I was a sharpshooter when I was a kid. I was an Army chaplain, as I said. I had my marksmanship merit badge as a Boy Scout. I was even a member of the NRA, and I've been a police chaplain my entire career in one place or another, including in London, including in New York, and I'm the chaplain to the sheriff in Palm Beach County right now. So, I'm not afraid of guns in the right hands, in the hands of the military, in the hands of the police, in the hands of designated, licensed, trained guards that we need. But the proliferation of guns, the ability of nut jobs to get guns, is something that we got to work on together to shut down.
I know that politics and gun violence and religion are such interesting topics that there will be differences of opinion. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to talk on those topics, which are topics that create a lot of, that provoke the minds of people in America. You'll have a lot of differences of opinion, and hence the reason why we wanted to bring our religious interfaith leaders today on this program, to voice your interfaith expressions on these matters. from a learning and educational point of view, because we live in such a society, and it's important that we have a balance and we understand. We kind of change that. We will always have to agree to disagree and understand and accept other people's opinion. But the bottom line is we live with love and unity and understanding of each other. Okay, we have the reference.
I am, in response to my brother, I'm concerned that non-persons of colors extremists are given a pass, but persons of color extremists are not. Those who are part of the Ku Klux Klan would say they are Christians. They're given a pass to hold tikis and hold marches in Virginia. But Muslim or other faith communities that have extremists, the president calls them certain names. But persons who look like him, who do violent acts, get a pass. I have a problem with that. Okay, yeah, exactly. We do know how I voted. I'm struggling with. I struggle with that. I struggle with that. I struggle with the fact that when I'm here at work on Friday, there must be a police vehicle in the front of the mosque to deter anyone from doing any violent acts to people who want to worship their God. Just as much as I struggle with when I went to Charleston, South Carolina, to Mother Emanuel, where I preached, where I've worshiped, when a person that didn't look like them came in and committed violent acts. Why do we have to have police protection in places where we worship, where we welcome others, because of the society that we live in, that we can't agree to disagree and be okay with that?
Okay, so let's get a question from the audience now. Yes, could we have the microphone?
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you guys for coming here and having this moment for everyone. So to your point, there's a lot of hate going on. And so my question specifically is, how can we outsell people like Donald Trump, that there's a lot more common ground than what they're suggesting? Because I think at the end of the day, he's just selling people effectively on whatever, negative belief, or that there's a lot more negativity or lack of a common ground than exists. So what can we do as a community and as individuals, and I don't know if you guys have anything planned, to outsell them on the truth, I'd say?
Can I have Reverend Grace?
Okay, go
Want
ahead,
to make a
Reverend.
comment on that? Yes.
We all going to jump in on that one.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes.
I,
Everybody seems to love Trump, right? You just, as you hear the name Trump, you just jump on Trump. That's good. It rhymes together anyhow. Go ahead.
as individuals, as community, and especially as clergy leaders, it's very, very important that we make sure our voices are heard. And that, especially as clergy, we do have the ability through Al Hikmat TV, through Facebook, through our social media, through our newsletters, through our websites, to stand up and say, this is not okay, and we take a stand against it. It's one thing to be a philosopher, an armchair philosopher, and sit and say, I don't like what's going on, and it's another to take the stand. And taking the stand in being a panelist, in coming to a session like this, to be here to support what Sheikh is doing here, this all is so important. And what I wanted to say is that I would urge anyone who has a website or has any kind of social media at their fingertips to post on their wall or on their website an actual proclamation that says that this is not okay. We have this on Darshan Center's website. It says, not here, not now, not us. We say no to the current political discourse that would have citizens and residents of the United States acquiesce to a policy of discrimination based upon one's religious affiliation. And we signed that actual proclamation in December 10th, 2015, so this is the anniversary of this. But it's important to keep on saying this. It's important for us to make a stand, no matter what. Exactly what Rabbi said earlier about when they came for fill in the blank. We have to stand up for our people of color brothers and sisters who are, and you're exactly right in saying that there's a different standard, and that's not okay. It's not okay for that to happen. We have to stand up and do something about it, and I believe that getting involved with our police departments is the first step. As a community, we can go to police departments and we could become part of the dialogue.
And that comment is coming from someone who has how many years of experience in the police?
20 years as a police lieutenant in NYPD and very involved with educating police recruits. You know, we have something called the Citizens Police Academy. We have something called a clergy collective. I don't know what it is down here at BSO or Miami or what the police department structure is like or how willing and accepting they are to hear what we have to say, but we can make a difference. And we have a wonderful avenue through the mosque. A wonderful avenue because you already have this community collective, and then you can just kind of get your in through the sheikh, through the panelists. I'm certainly here to help in any way possible.
And that's 20 years of NYPD lieutenant experience. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Reverend. And Reverend White had his hand up here.
For me, I have not seen the majority communities come out against these issues in major numbers. I'm concerned about that. I was one of those persons who didn't think Trump was going to win. And in the words, I was fooled like everybody else. But I'm concerned now that I don't see the majority community speaking out against the foolishness. And it's like it's okay that we get a pass, that nobody speaks up. That's what I would want to see from the majority community, whether it's whoever they are, whether they're Republican, Democrat, red state, blue state, independent, whatever side they would fall on. That's what I would want to see. It would make me feel more comfortable. If there happens to be an issue with our Muslim brothers and sisters who are next to us, or if something happens for us and we move to another location, I pray that our relationship is developed, that we can always work together. In the words of one preacher, my theology does not need to dictate my sociology. How I view God does not need to dictate my compassion for other human beings, regardless of what God they serve. And for me, my theology is not so warped that it can't be driven by sociology. The way I view God taught. That's.
So while the rabbi is making his comments, those of you who have a question, please raise your hands so the brother with the microphone will know to pass the mic
I
to you
defer to
accordingly,
my
okay?
handsome friend here to my left.
So keep your eyes on those hands that went up, Brother Shamir. Go ahead. Okay, so you're going to... Okay. Okay, we got a question here, Brother Shamir, in the front here, and then we got one in the back there also, so...
Assalamu alaikum, good morning and shalom. When I first came to this country, I immigrated from England. The immigration officer asked me, why are you coming to this country to live? I said, I'm here to take back the colonies. And the reason why I made that statement, the reason why I made that statement, because of the division that's happening in this country, I found that the leaders and the popular leaders in this country, the church leaders, the evangelists that you see on television every day, preaching to millions and millions of people, are not making an impact in this country to bring the people together. And I wonder why. And that is my view on that. But my question is to Reverend White. Reverend, one of the major problems I see is racism in this country. I was born in Trinidad and Tobago, where we don't have that problem because we live together as a people. In England, I have not seen it. I know for now, but I have not seen that either. But what I have noticed among the people of African origin living in these countries, one of the main reasons I think the problem may lie in that because there's so many single mothers that I know personally with children with no role models in the home. And as a result, they are not pushed to excel or to succeed or to move into academic lines. And as a result of that, you find that the crime in these countries among the population, the immigrant population or the non-white population, the high incidence of crime is higher among the black community. Could you tell me why this might be?
I'm going to let you start, Rabbi, and then I'll
Feel
come
free.
back.
I know it gets a little hot,
I
but
gotta-
anyhow, that's why we're here. That's why we are here, to get the questions and answers.
The African American community that we have in this country is the product of one of the two original sins of this society. One being the treatment of people of African origin who were brought over here in chains to be slaves, and the other original sin, which was the treatment of American Indians. Now, contrary to the way that Caribbean people of African origin were treated, there was a systematic effort during the period of slavery and then following in Jim Crow to destroy the spirit, to destroy the soul of African Americans, not just to use their bodies. The products of that we experience in the African American community with all sorts of social problems, and nobody is more aware of that than African Americans, but it's the product of hundreds of years of oppression and maltreatment and really destructive kind of things. In the Caribbean, in contrast to the United States, families were largely kept together. There was much more freedom to continue to observe African traditions, including African religious traditions. But in America, they tried to destroy all of that. Families were deliberately divided up, were deliberately sent in different directions. So, I mean, any kind of a condemnation of African Americans based on the statistics of crime, when you've tried to destroy people for 400 years, sometimes they have certain social problems as well as economic problems that create problems for all of us in our society. But we need to massively, as Americans, own what we've done. And I don't know what England you lived in, but I lived in a very racist England that was filled with bigotry. As a British citizen, I voted to remain in the European Union, but the vote to leave the European Union in Britain was the product of the same kind of racism which has produced Donald Trump in the United States, a racism which was anti-immigrant, which was anti-race, which was anti-Caribbean. The Africans in Britain are largely of Caribbean origin, and the bigotry is rampant there. I'm not saying we don't want to have a contest as to who's worse. Okay, but the bigotry is there as much as any place else. So I just wanted to take up the cudgels for my African American brothers in this country and say, no way am I going to permit condemnation of them because of the products of the oppression over these hundreds of years that they've been here and they were brought here against their will. I celebrate that they have produced some of the greatest leaders of this country, including Martin Luther King and including, I would say, Barack Obama. I celebrate the great contributions to cultural life in America of African Americans, that despite their oppression, music in this country, culture in this country, and religion in this country. I grew up, I would go to synagogue on Friday night and Saturday, and I went to black churches on Sunday morning. And if I know how to preach and I know how to pray, it's because I learned it there. So, their contribution despite their oppression, has been something incredible which we should celebrate. Yeah, we got to work together on the problems, but we got to own that we did it. We did it. I want to tell you a quick story. My family has only been in this country for a little bit over 100 years. And when I was in England, I was the rabbi who was at the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Queen's coronation in 52. And she became Queen in 52. She wasn't coronated until 53. So I was at Westminster Abbey. And the BBC called me in to ask me how I felt as an American celebrating the Queen when 250 years ago my ancestors overthrew George III. And I looked at them with his dumb look and I said, "Sir, at the time of George III, my ancestors were getting chased around the steppes of Russia by the Cossacks. Long live the Queen." I mean, you know, people don't realize we have history. But when we're all Americans, we are Americans as if we have been here for hundreds of years together. You've been here for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is. You own this country now, and we got to own the responsibility for the original sin of the way that we treated African Americans, the way we did it not only in slavery, but in Jim Crow, and the way through all sorts of ways we've continued to treat them and to make sure they stay as second and third class citizens. We got to own that and work to overcome that.
So we have a question, but I'll let the Reverend respond before we get the next question. So please pass the microphone on to the next question, please.
Friday of last week, I was in Ghana. Led a pilgrimage of some members and some friends of our church to visit 2 of the slave castles. My second time visiting the Cape Coast slave castle. Walking through the door of no return. Last place slaves in Ghana were before they came to the Caribbean, South America, or even North America. I juxtapose that with being a 5th generation Floridian whose great-grandmother and great-grandfather were slaves. And that 1 out of 4 slaves made it to the new land. 3 out of 4 died in the Middle Passage. And the systemic injustice against African Americans in this country is not like anyone else, closely second only to the Jews.
It's not a contest. We want to.
Right. And so your quoting of statistics to me is out of context and not looking at the big picture. That families were ripped apart and culture was stolen. Some in the name of Jesus. And were made to be Christians and were made it laws passed against them to teach them how to read and write, and the only thing they taught them in the Bible was slaves obey your masters. Not that there's neither Jew, no Greek, no slave, no free. So understanding that history and that 8 years ago, the viral attacks against Barack Obama by the present president, and 8 years later we elect him, which says to me that whiteness trumps everything in this country. And I would dare say white maleness trumps everything in this country. So do we have problems? Yes. But when a system has been built to not to crush you, but to destroy you. And you still fight through that and accomplish great and wonderful, marvelous things. I think it says a lot of the testimony of the people of African Americans in this country. I think we can't take those things out of context. If I have no skills to find a job, and so I decide to go the criminal route to feed my family, I go to prison, I come out, I have no way to get a job because I have a record. I can't vote. And if I do get a job, the cost of living is so tremendous, housing is so tremendous in South Florida, then I'm stuck in a vicious cycle of poverty. While I've traveled the Caribbean, and the entrepreneurial spirit in the people in the Caribbean, regardless of the country, is tremendous. Because they have no other choice but to be entrepreneurs. But when you don't have that push in America, then when I can't get a loan, even though I may have the proper credit score because I'm a person of color. Or if I'm not controlling the person who's hiring the people because I don't look like them. Y'all understand? Okay.
So based on what we have heard, this question of race in America and with African Americans, etc., I don't know if some of you have following the steps and what has been happening, but you will notice that the Muslims are going up that same ladder. That same sort of suffering that African Americans faced here, we are seeing the same kind of racism being, attached to Muslims in America around, different places, maybe Miami and New York, I don't know, because of the multicultural setting, but in a lot of other states, it's very, very bad.
Sheikh, the racism is very similar when applied to brown people who may have come from India or Pakistan or Bangladesh or wherever. But the response, I've got to say, but you got to realize the difference, because most Muslims in this country came here as relatively recent immigrants. And they came with good educations, with a great sense of hope, with strong families and a strong sense of religion. And the reality is that Muslims in America are a phenomenally successful group that I, as your American neighbor, celebrate. I love what Muslims have done and what Muslims have been. And when you have great leaders like Sheikh and you have great Muslim institutions like this one, in just a relatively few years. So it's not, even though the discrimination is similar because people are racist and people who are bigots find a very easy movement from target to target, Muslims have responded with that inner sense of pride and resilience. I spoke at a mosque about a month ago in Dothan, Alabama, and every single man in that mosque was a doctor. I asked a 9-year-old girl, Muslim girl, wearing a beautiful hijab, and she was a lovely young woman. So I said, are you going to be a doctor when you grow up like your dad? She said, no, I think I'm going to be a lawyer. But no, maybe I'll be a doctor and a lawyer. So there's a sense of hope, there's a sense of drive, there's a sense of family, there's a sense of religion, which gives a sense of hope. Now, my thing is we got to be together. Good things that happen never happen because the majority comes around to them. And if we sit around waiting for the majority of white Americans or the majority of white men to come around to doing the right thing, it ain't never going to happen. If we're going to get change, we're going to do it because the minority that stands together and that links arms together across racial and religious divides unifies. And we appeal to the great spirit, which is also America, which is capable of motivating this country to change.
So on that point, that's exactly what I wanted to say now. If Muslims came with all this sort of ability, you can imagine what the African Americans went through over their years. So I know we're going to pass the microphone over to the deacon and the reverend on this side, But let me take a few questions because of time. Let's take a few questions up in the air, and then they can answer those questions together so we save some time. We get some of your response from the audience. We had one question there. We're going to take about 3 or 4 questions, and I want the panelists to put them together in your mind as you respond so we don't, we can save time actually. Yes, we have a visitor from the United Kingdom here. Oh, it seems as though the British taking the microphone here.
Hello, assalamu alaikum, shalom. My question is
Maybe you want to stand so they can see you.
I'm actually from the UK. I'm from Manchester. And I heard your comment saying, oh, the Brexit thing. And I said to myself, I was sat in Australia 2 years ago in Sydney, and I said to myself, if the UK, they go through with this Brexit, I'm one of them that would definitely leave. Because the racism in the UK is just too much. It's up and coming, and it's getting too much for the people, the colored people. My question is, this has been irritating me for a long time. And Donald Trump, he made Jerusalem the capital for the Jewish people. I respect all faiths, and I've actually traveled to Jerusalem, and I saw that there was a lot of peace inside that one city. Jewish people, Christian people, Muslim people, they all got along. And I feel that inshallah, we hope for peace. And what I want to ask is there any chance, is there anything that as Jewish people, as Christian people, and as Muslim people, would or can Jerusalem become the capital for all 3 faiths? And my question is to my dear Rabbi.
All right, so we're going to take a few questions again, Rabbi, before we make you respond to that, because we got to get the deacon and the reverend here. Any other question we have on the floor right now? Yes. Well, that's a hot question, Rabbi, so you can't leave. You got to answer that. We're going to put you up to deal with Trump. Yes, the question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
I tell you this, 20 years ago, when I was admitted in Miracle, I came to the border, and the policeman came out, received the package that I was given from Canada, thick packet like that. So he took it inside, and about 20 minutes he came out back, and he gave it to me the same way I gave him. I didn't know if he opened it or not. But what he told me, he said, my boy, welcome to the land of milk and honey. I say, yeah. And the truth, up to today, I got that milk and honey. But I work hard. Now, I met up with my teacher, not my teacher. In all religion, there's only 2 things, good and bad. You choose it. Thanks to you, Shafara. Give me some nice thought. This that's going on here, remember you did it before, when you used to visit those rabbi places and you used to have to coffee. You were the first to start this. You built it so good that I will see this. But what we need more of these people to come out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other question before we pass the microphone over to the panelists? Huh? Okay.
Partly question, Chairman, but start by saying I admire the steps taken by you to invite these people and this audience to what is happening here today. I see it as a start of a movement that if we take it seriously, we must each and every one of us act in a way to present to the leadership of this country, our loss of faith in the leadership of this country, and the stupidness that is going on by our president. Brother Chairman, we must act as individuals first of all, and then collectively, because none of us in this audience seems to be in agreement with what is going on. For me, I don't think Trump won the election, and I don't believe he won it. That is for me. But since he is there, I cannot come to terms with a leader behaving in the way that he's leading. And therefore, to start with, I, on behalf of this audience, if it suits you, call on the leadership of this country, that is the president, to withdraw his remarks against the Muslim community in this world and to apologize, because we all stand together. And let me say, Interfaith, I love it because I was born in Trinidad. And my neighbor on the right is a Christian, and my neighbor on the left is a Hindu, and that kind of thing. So people must respect, each and every one of us must respect each other. But when it comes to the quality of leadership, which is a shame, which people throughout the world is laughing at us in this country because of our leader, we must have the courage to stand up, act individually, first of all, through whatever mechanism we can, and then collectively let the world know that he is there. But let me point out this. Perhaps that leader, Trump, is there for a reason. And the reason I think he is there is for us to open our eyes. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you very much. We have another question, and Brother Hanif did not tell you he's a former member of parliament of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. That's why he sounds like a politician, right? Yes, the next question, and then we'll come back to the panelists. Yes. I got to apologize on behalf of the rabbi. He did have a previous engagement, and he had really, really, and truly begged and insisted that he get permission to leave at that time. So, yes, the question in the back.
Thank you for allowing me a second question. So I don't want to discount the value of standing up, God knows, and unifying, especially in the face of just being, bullied and discrimination and so forth. But I wonder if you guys can also share just any programs you have, whether now is the right forum or after, where we can also not just stand up, because I feel like when we stand up, other people stand up in defiance as well, and can sometimes be confrontational, but also to reach out, right? So I think of the places that I visited in the last few years, this very remote parts of America, like Central Florida and Mississippi and places like that, where I know if we stand up to them, they're just going to stand up in defiance as well. And I think it's because of they'd say that they're educated, but they're educated in things that we'd say are negative, right? I think it's about knocking on their door and breaking bread with them and showing them love, just the way that you have shown us love today by breaking bread with us, and inviting us here. So if you have any programs like that, because I think while standing up is important, I think if you don't do it, reaching out with love, it can also be dangerous. So if you guys have any suggestions or recommendations on how to better do that, it'd be well received.
Okay, we got two more questions again, and then we're going to pass it over. So you guys got to do some memorizing on these questions. How could we make Jerusalem the capital of all three faiths, have more events like this? And what I will think is that maybe the ushers, if you can make sure everyone sign their name and a number or an email address, that we can keep everyone updated and informed on activities like these, interfaith activities and community services that we keep on doing. Yes, brother.
Hi, everyone. So just to play a bit of devil's advocate, there's like 380 million Americans, and there's like 6 million Muslims. And a lot of Americans have never even met a Muslim in their lives. They don't even know what they look like and who they are, what they do with their lives, etc. So one of the methods of trying to bring a solution to that was going just back to old school, which is religious education on an elementary level, on a middle school level, on a high school level, even a college level. Now, I don't know, perhaps that's a bit of a mountain that we have to climb because a lot of people just don't want to learn or study religion education, religious education at that level, but how can we go about bringing that back into academia, into the curriculum, where we're not already proselytizing to children or to teenagers or whatever, but we are trying to open up their eyes to different cultures and religions, and just to study that. So hopefully, there's a saying, get them when they're young, so hopefully, maybe it's somewhat too late for the older generation, but how can we bring back religious education into the curriculum?
Okay, beautiful. So we have the panelists now that will respond, Deacon, and of course, Reverend White, everyone. You have one more question? Okay, let's get the question. Yeah, could you pass the microphone for her, please? No, take the microphone, because we need to get it recorded so that our viewers worldwide can hear.
My question would be to all of you. Do you guys feel in this day and age with media and the government that we have, are we going to be able to eradicate the problem that we're discussing here today? Media plays a very important part in everything that's going on. With a government that we have and with the media, in here, how successful is this going to be in the future and right now? And do you guys believe and have the faith within that we will be able to eradicate all of these problems that we're talking about? Thank you.
Okay, so now, Deacon.
There was a reference made to the city of Jerusalem. And I might remind you that it was about 25 years ago that the Vatican proposed that Jerusalem be an international city. That was never acted upon, and so today we see that it's still the subject of violence and discord. I think it's very, very important that we keep all this in proper perspective. We're talking about a man named Trump, a country named the United States, and various particular experiences that we've all had. This has been going on a long time, folks, a long time. It even goes back before the foundation of Islam in the 7th century. It goes back to the very dawn of humanity itself. And so what I'm proposing is that we move in a personal way, that each one of us take from this today a determination in our own heart that everyone we touch, we will try to bring to that person a sense of fairness and justice and equality. But more than that, there must also be, as was mentioned by the gentleman in the front row, there must also be a communal effort. And so what I'm proposing today is that we have representatives from the major religions in South Florida, and that we come together. The only way that our government today will be affected is by numbers and by prestige. That's what we need. So, for example, from this small group of, say, 100 or whatever we are, if we could begin to move in a communal sense, to move into the spotlight with a new organization dedicated to justice and to peace, then we've really accomplished something here this morning, in addition to the determination in our own hearts to be better people and to live and look on each other as totally equal people. We have no right to sit back, for to do nothing is to allow injustice to reign. So this I would propose, Sheikh.
Thank you very much, and that gives me the idea that we should do more of this sort of program, because, listen, every little bit counts. This goes on YouTube, it remains on YouTube, on Facebook, on the Al-Hikmah TV networks. People can Google it at any times. You never can tell where this message can reach and to whom it would reach. So more of these sort of topics and discussions, we have already, and I want to thank the deacon for that wonderful idea, and I'm sure we'll get the reverend support and the rabbi, and we have a whole, we had other interfaith leaders who were asking us to come by and be part of the panelists this morning. But, because of time, we just couldn't have too many. But what we're going to do, we're going to try to have live recording programs, because a lot of good programs like this go wasted. It's not recorded, it's not aired, people don't have references towards it. So we want to do that on the Al-Hikmah TV, and we're going to probably have a program like this maybe every month or at least every 3 months here or at the Al-Hikmah studio and Dawa Center next door, where we have a different setup. And this sort of program with your involvement and different questions and answers can reach really worldwide. Yes, Dr. Grace.
So, these concepts that we're talking about, these issues, these problems are so complex that in 70 minutes isn't going to be solved. I have a proposal, and that is all action words, all verbs that we as individuals, as clergy, and as community can do. Number one, validate. We can validate that we have a system in our country that is racist. Validating that. We have Islamophobia that is happening. Validate that that's happening. Ethnocentrism that's happening. We're like an equal opportunity discrimination, bias country right now. No one really is immune to the harm and the injury that's happening in our systems in this country. So validate that that's happening. And we've heard a lot of validation here today. Communicating. We're doing that. We're communicating. We're listening. We're talking. We're giving our opinions. But we're also communicating and listening, really effectively listening to each other. The police, the community, the government, the community, the clergy, the congregation. Coordinate and collaborate. Coordinating and collaborating, and I totally agree 100% and would be completely willing to come back and do some more work, some more listening to the injuries, listening to how people are feeling discriminated against, and doing something about it through education. And so someone had raised that about this curriculum, religious education curriculum, and requiring that in our colleges, requiring that in our police academies. We have Sacred Journey Interfaith Seminary where we teach people all about the various religions. And they actually come here, our students come to the mosque, and they learn about what is Islam. So education is important. Validation, communication, collaboration, and education. And with God's help, nothing is impossible. I believe that.
Thank you very much, Reverend White.
I don't know if we need more organizations. Do we need to have people rallying around common causes? One of the things that I want to talk to later is how can Emmanuel Temple and the mosque collaborate on doing something that the community can see, two different faith groups doing something for the common good. And then it begins, how can we start dialoguing and not just going into our places of worship without the usual hellos, good morning, good afternoon, but how can we work together to fix some poverty issues with resources? I often, we had a discussion 2 weeks ago at our church on the role of the black church in 21st century. And I often reminded, and we did a live, Facebook Live, as well as on our app, on our website, with several persons. And one of the things I reminded everyone was that the black church was not in lock stock behind the civil rights movement. The Baptist church split over King's social justice agenda. And so you're never going to get everyone together, but that does not mean that things can't get done with a small amount of people who really want to get something done. And so I think it becomes, can we get some people that we don't have to create an organization, which means that we got to have a president. We got to have all of these things. And can we get some people together who want to do something, and then let's do it, and not have bureaucracy and too many barriers that hinders work from being done because it's an organization, and let's create a movement.
Okay, thank you very much. So, it's 12:45, and we had a mark that the program will be a 1-hour session from 11:30 to 12:30. But because I know we had the questions and the topic have been going very interesting, or the various topics, we went on a little 15 minutes more. But if there is any more questions, we could take 1 or 2 questions again, and we will then let the panelists give their few words of a couple seconds of conclusion remarks, and then, we'll go back for the brunch. It's still time. There's some of you who came late. Some of you probably didn't eat enough before, and I'm sure there are a lot more refreshments in the back. So we have a lot of time. We can go back and socialize and meet, because I think that's one of the problems. We need, in addition to talk, we need to eat and drink and socialize together, so we better understand and know each other. So we're going to take these questions together and have the answers and conclude in this next session. So please stay tuned for a few more minutes again. How many questions? We got another question in the back? One more question? 2 questions? 3 questions? Okay.
I don't have a question necessarily. I'd like to commend all of you very much for organizing this
Thank you.
this morning. It's been very informative, and I'm pleased to see as many people as we have. I believe that it's up to us individuals to talk about organizing this and organizing that, and that's possibly going to be successful. But I feel it's up to us to look at each other as my brother and sisters. And I think that's the only way we're going to start this format, is to take it upon ourselves, to look at each other and find the God that's within that person's heart, so that we can relate and truly relate and love that person. And one by one, it's got to be one by one. And we'll make it. We will make it. My brother.
Inshallah, God willing. Thank you very much. Can we have the next question or comment? And you all have been a wonderful audience. That's nice. Thank you very much. Yes, we have one of the youths in town. Could you stand so the panelists can see you?
All right, so, Assalamu alaikum and hello. All right, so in my AP Human Geography class, we're learning about religions, right? And during the class, we were talking about Christianity, Roman Catholics, and Baptist, and is there more? I think there isn't. And so he went to Jerusalem, and there was like this temple for Jesus, and he said something like Catholics were guarding outside the temple, but inside there were Baptist people, or it was kind of perplexing for him, and he was like, he wanted to know why, but nobody in the class knew. And right now I feel like somebody could help me answer his question.
Okay.
So I could come back to him like, yeah, this is why.
Okay, beautiful. So we'll have the panelists ask that question. Okay. I think that's it. Any more questions? Or we have 2 more questions here again. Yes, the microphone there. Okay. Seems as though the youth's on the floor, so we'd like you to stand.
Good morning. My question to you all is, what is your definition of an ideal society? We all have our different definitions. We all think what a perfect world would be, and of course, none of those. But I do believe there's some sort of middle ground where everybody, if at least not 1 or 2 ideas, we can all agree that at least this or that should be in our ideal world. So like, if you could sum it up in like 1 or 2 words or a couple words of what you think our ideal world would be and how we can reach that, what would that be?
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a question here. So that I suppose would be the last question, and then the panelists.
Assalamu alaikum again. It's not a question, it's a matter of fact, a support. I just like to support Reverend White. He just mentioned things need to do more and more often. What I say, instead of doing inside, smaller version, can anyway we can do something together outdoor, bigger number, bigger scale. Maybe 1,000 gonna show up there. Hindu, Muslim, Buddha, Christian, all together in one banner. Know each other. I mean, there's going to be a more. Nowadays, what we are doing now, only we can see in the internet or whoever present here. But if you do something outdoor in big number, in a big banner, probably it will be more fruitful and it will be easy to know each other. Thank you.
Good, wonderful suggestion, comment. Maybe we probably have an interfaith picnic together and invite everybody to a Sunday afternoon picnic, and the deacon bring members of his church, the reverend brings from her church and services, the reverend here, the rabbi, and families like to socialize like that. Sometimes they think that this is too formal, this is too hardcore, it's talk, and they always like to leave it up to the others to do. And then that way we may be able to bring families and children and families. And because, in my 40 years of this kind of interfaith work, I've realized that a lot of people want to do it, they love to do it, but they always believe others will get it done and they don't need to be there. And maybe a lot of talk sometimes is good, and we need to have the talk and the ideas and the suggestions, but just the mere fact that kids are playing together and they're having a barbecue together. In that case, it'll have to be a halal kosher barbecue. And, they play games together. It may bring some of our Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, all these different faiths, families, youths, and kids together. And they will communicate later on and create a bond. And maybe they are the future leaders. Not maybe, yes, they are the future leaders. And maybe that bond will strengthen that sort of togetherness in the country. And I pick that up. What do you guys think about that? And we start with the leaders we have here. We're going to have a picnic together, all right? And bring all the faiths together to a real nice picnic. Not just talk, okay? So let's start with the reverend here, and then we'll conclude.
But we can't call it a picnic.
What will we call it?
We have to call it something else, because picnic is a negative connotation for African Americans.
Oh, truly?
For us.
No problem. You give your suggestion. What do you suggest? You tell me your suggestion.
We African Americans, the term picnic, from a historical perspective, some use that as a term to pick a nigger. And so we try not to use the term picnic.
So we call it a fun day.
Family fun day.
Interfaith family fun day. All right? Keep the name. Interfaith family fun day on a Sunday.
On a Sunday.
Yeah. All right? Sunday afternoon, so we get Muslims, we get Christians, we get Jews. It does not affect any of the Sabbath services, because most of the time is in the afternoon. So we got a name.
I think you had several great questions. The young man, I would need to know a little bit more before I could answer that question from my perspective. I would need to know a little bit more. I think, and I think that's pretty much. I'll let the other panelists take care of the questions.
Beautiful. So you want to just give your closing remarks, a few seconds,
I think,
of what you feel of
I'm excited about being here. I look forward to us having a private dialogue and discussing how we can work together.
Thank you very much. Give the Reverend a round of applause, please. Thank you very much. Deacon.
The question was asked, what is an ideal society? And I think we would probably agree that an ideal society is one in which justice and peace and compassion reign. But what we must remember is that this is a journey to an ideal society, one which we may never see, but one to which we are compelled to work. And so I would like to quote for you the following wonderful words A kind word with forgiveness is better than almsgiving. This comes from the Quran, Surah 2, verse 263. There's so much there on which to build hope in our hearts. And so as we go forth today from here, let us recall, individually we reach out to recognize injustice, the equality of all. And secondly, that we strive to form some kind of organization that will bring pressure on people who should have known better.
Thank you very much. A round of applause. Thank you.
Many great questions, and again, in a few seconds, very difficult to answer those complex questions. An ideal society. First of all, as my guru, Swami Jyotirmayananda, teaches and the Hindu scriptures teach, is that this is a mirage. This is not real. So it's kind of like an ideal world is waking up to the reality that we are God, right? That God is within us, and God is the reality behind the world. And if I can see God in you and know that there is no God but God, that's the ideal world. Now, all of that is great. How do we apply that in practical reality? And so these issues that we're talking about today are they're critical. We must take a stand. We must take action. And so the Darshan Center for Spiritual Evolution commits with the mosque and with continuing our relationship and our partnership to do whatever it takes to put this into action.
Thank you very much. Give the Reverend a round of applause. And you know, we are just wonderfully on schedule. We got 3 minutes to make a 90-minute session. So this was wonderful. We had aimed at 30 minutes. We're just 3 minutes away from 90 minutes, and we'll conclude. But I want to say a special thanks to Reverend Grace, Dr. Grace, Deacon, my good friend here, Deacon Norm, Carol, and Reverend White, and our Rabbi Mark Weiner for being our panelists today on this program, Voice of Interfaith Community Expression. I must say it has been a blessing to be here with you. I really enjoyed your presence, being the audience, being our guest on the show at Darul Uloom in collaboration with Al Hikmah TV. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. And one nice thing came out. A lot of these questions and a lot of this sort of interaction, we are going to have what is called an interfaith family fun day. We're going to let you know about it. I'll consult the religious leaders. We'll put a nice day that is most convenient for everybody. I know Sunday afternoon is already the day. We'll choose what date. We'll send a message out to you and to other reverends and pastors and rabbis. And we're going to set up a stage. We're not going to just have a family fun day, eat and play. We'll have a time where we'll get different religious leaders and members of the community. Everyone can get up and talk and give their comments and what it is like to be here. And in that way, we bring congregations together. We bring the communities together, and we make it a bigger and brighter event. And listen, action speaks louder than voice, and that will prevail. And I think that will work fantastic. I want to take this opportunity, of course, to thank each and every one of you. But do remember, we got a prayer in about 30 to 45 minutes. But there are a lot of refreshments in the back, and that's why we set it up at that time. So those of you who came late, or those of you who did eat and would like to eat again and have some refreshments and some snacks in the back, they got a lot. It's going to be sufficient enough for a lunch. You can again go and socialize and meet. We got a half an hour to do that and relax and feel like one family. And we can start the family fun day on this Sunday, today, right here. Have something and we talk about it. Come up with your ideas. Send us emails. You got to take our cards. You got our emails, our phone numbers. Send us suggestions for this day and for the other events like this. So this is not the beginning and the end. We will continue from here and bring other communities together. Thank you very much. You had a comment?
Salam.
Thank you very much, and a round of applause to yourself, to everybody. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Jazakallah. I cannot close without saying a special thanks and Jazakallah, meaning God's blessings, and may God reward all our youths who have set up this place. The Al-Hikmah TV crew, you see on the screen there, Voice of Interfaith Clergy / Community Expressions, that's the name of this show. All the youths, the Al-Hikmah TV crew, the volunteers, our Halka group, our students, our imams, Al-Hikmah staff, Alicia, Salma, Faria, Fauzia, Sister Zelina, Bibi. And it's a whole team of people we have who work towards making this happen. I can't call everybody's name, but you know, if they had done all of this and you didn't come, it would not have been a success. So we got to thank you, the audience, thank them, most of all, thank God first, and thank our panelists. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you. I'll give you my card. If our Brother Fahad and our girls there could lead some of the guests to the auditorium again so they can go and help themselves. Please, thank you very much. We have some interfaith pamphlets at the front desk there. You can have some of them. The girls will help you out. We'll have some of our volunteers by the desk, some interfaith pamphlets with our numbers and the whole 9 yards. Please take it before you leave.